I stood at the sink in my daughter's kitchen, the morning she started her new job, watching her hands shake so bad she nearly dropped the coffee pot. "You'll be fine," I told her. "You worked hard for this." She just nodded, not trusting her own voice. 3 hours later, I walked into that building to bring her the lunch she'd forgotten on the counter, and found her on her knees in a guest bathroom, scrubbing a toilet in the navy blazer she'd bought for her interview, while her husband's mother stood in the doorway, laughing and telling a passing bellman. That's really the only thing she's good for. Scrubbing. My daughter didn't look up. She just kept scrubbing, her shoulders folded in on themselves like she was trying to disappear. I said nothing. I turned around, walked out to my truck, and made a phone call that ended, 3 weeks later, with an entire family losing everything they'd built their pride on. Before I get into what happened, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching this from, and what time it is right there. I like knowing how far these stories travel while I'm telling them. Now let me back up and tell you how we got to that bathroom floor. My name doesn't matter much in this story, so I'll just tell you I'm a father, 63 years old, spent 39 years running a small commercial flooring business before I sold it and retired 2 years back. My wife passed when our daughter was 19, ovarian cancer, fast and cruel, and after that it was just the two of us. I raised her the best I knew how. Taught her to check her oil, taught her to negotiate, taught her that nobody was better than her, and she wasn't better than anybody. She went and got a degree in hospitality management, worked her way up through 2 different hotel groups, doing the unglamorous jobs first, and by the time she was 29, she'd built herself a real resume. Not handed to her, earned. Then she met a man at a conference in Atlanta. Charming fellow, worked in his family's business, told her she was the smartest woman he'd ever met. His mother ran a boutique hotel company out of Charleston called Cordova Grand, 4 historic properties, the kind with wrought iron balconies and valet parking, and a reputation among old money Charleston families for doing everything just so. My daughter fell for him fast, and within a year and a half they were married, and I walked her down in aisle strung with magnolias and told myself I was happy, because she looked happy, and that's supposed to be enough for a father. I'll admit I had a bad feeling about her mother-in-law from the rehearsal dinner. The woman had a way of complimenting you that felt like being weighed on a scale and found a little short. She looked at my flooring business, which by then was doing better than fine, like it was something you'd find on the bottom of a shoe. But my daughter loved her husband, and I've learned that when your child is happy, you swallow your instincts and you smile and you pass the roles. 18 months into the marriage, my daughter's own hotel group got acquired and half the staff got laid off, her included. She was devastated. She'd clawed her way up from front desk to assistant director of operations, and now she was starting over. Her mother-in-law swooped in with what looked, on the surface, like generosity. "Come work for us. Learn the family business. You'll be running a property of your own within the year." My daughter called me that night so excited I could hear it crackling through the phone. She said, "I have real talent, Dad." She said she sees it. I should have asked more questions right then. I didn't. Her first day, I decided to surprise her with lunch. She'd forgotten it on the kitchen counter that morning in all her nerves, a container of leftover chicken and rice she'd made the night before, and I figured I'd drop it off and get out of her hair, maybe catch a glimpse of her in her new element. I drove to the flagship property, a converted cotton exchange building on the historic waterfront, marble floors, chandeliers, the whole production. The woman at the front desk told me my daughter was on the 4th floor. I took the elevator up, and that's when I found her. Guest suite 412. Door propped open with a cleaning cart. My daughter on her knees in her navy blazer, rubber gloves pulled up over her sleeves, scrubbing a toilet bowl while her mother-in-law stood in the doorway with her arms crossed, immaculate in a cream suit, telling a young bellman who'd stopped to watch that this was the only thing her son's wife was really cut out for. Scrubbing. Some people just have a gift for it. The bellman laughed, the nervous laugh you laugh when you don't know what else to do. My daughter's face was red, and she wasn't looking at either of them. She was looking at the toilet bowl like if she scrubbed hard enough she could disappear into it. I stood in that hallway holding a container of chicken and rice, and something in my chest went very cold and very quiet. I didn't say a word. I set the container down on the cleaning cart, turned around, and walked back to the elevator. I heard my daughter's mother-in-law call after me, something bright and social. "Oh, is that her father? So nice of you to stop by." I didn't answer. I got in the elevator, and I pressed my palms flat against the cold metal wall, and I made myself breathe until the doors opened on the lobby. Outside, the Charleston sun was doing that thing it does in early September, thick and gold and merciless, and I sat in my truck for a long time before I could make my hands work the key. Then I called an old friend of mine, Dwayne Kessler, a private investigator I'd used years back, when a subcontractor tried to skip out owing me $80,000. Dwayne picked up on the second ring. Franklin. Long time. Dwayne, I need your help with something bigger than the flooring business ever gave you. Talk to me. There's a woman named Camille Sutter, runs a hotel group here in Charleston, Cordova Grand. I want to know everything about her and her company. Finances, debt, weaknesses. Everything you can find. There was a pause on the line, the kind that told me he'd heard something in my voice he didn't like. How deep, Franklin? As deep as it goes. Give me a few days. I hung up and sat there another 10 minutes before I trusted myself to drive. That night my daughter called me, and I almost didn't answer because I didn't trust my voice either, but I picked up. Dad, hey, sorry I missed you today. I heard you stopped by. Her voice was doing that thing where she was trying so hard to sound normal that it came out brittle instead. How was your first day, sweetheart? A pause. It was fine, learning the ropes. Camille says everybody starts from the ground up, even family. Builds character. She laughed a little, and it was the saddest sound I think I'd ever heard come out of my daughter, because I could tell she was reciting a line somebody had fed her, trying it on to see if it would fit. How long is this ground-up business supposed to last? A few weeks. Then I move into operations like she promised. Her voice brightened, forcing it. I can do a few weeks, Dad. I've done harder than this. I closed my eyes and thought about 29 years of building this girl up. Every science fair project, every college move-in day, every job interview I'd coached her through at our kitchen table, and I thought about 3 hours undoing all of it. You call me if it gets to be too much. You hear me? Anytime, day or night. I will. I promise. I love you, Dad. I love you too, kiddo. I didn't sleep much that night. I sat in my den looking at a photograph of my late wife on the bookshelf, her laughing at some joke I couldn't remember anymore, holding our daughter as a baby, and I made myself a promise, not for revenge. I want to be clear about that, because I've thought about this a lot since, and revenge was never really what I was after. I wanted something more permanent than that. I wanted the ground to shift under a woman who thought she could put her heel on my daughter's neck and call it a family tradition. Dwayne called back 2 mornings later, 7 a.m., and I could hear the energy in his voice even through the phone. Franklin, you need to sit down for this. I'm sitting. Cordova Grand is bleeding. They overexpanded, bought 2 more properties in Beaufort and Savannah at the top of the market, financed with variable rate debt right before rates climbed. They're carrying almost $11 million in liabilities. 2 of the 4 hotels are running at a loss. If nobody bails them out in the next 4 months, the banks start foreclosing, 1 property at a time. I stood at my kitchen looking out at the same dawn my wife used to love, orange bleeding into pink over the trees, and I felt something settle in me, cold and clear as creek water. How much to buy controlling interest? Dwayne went quiet for a second. Franklin, that's not pocket change. You're talking 8, maybe 9 million to take a majority stake in real control. I have it. You what? I've spent 38 years living like I didn't have money, Dwayne, even after I did. Same truck for 12 years. Never took the family on the vacations I could have afforded. I put almost everything into commercial real estate and index funds instead of a bigger house. That money's not doing anything but sitting there. I paused. It can sit there for me, or it can buy my daughter her dignity back. I know which one I want. That's your whole retirement, Jack. That's everything. Money grows back, I told him. What that woman's doing to my daughter doesn't grow back on its own. Set up a meeting. I want to see the numbers myself. We met 2 days later at a diner off King Street, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tastes like it's been on the burner since sunrise, because Dwayne said we needed somewhere nobody from Cordova Grand would ever set foot. He spread the documents across the table. Loan agreements, property assessments, vendor invoices, all of it. She lives like old money, he said, but it's borrowed money holding the whole thing up. The house on the Battery is mortgaged past its value. The cars are leased. 1 hard freeze and the whole structure cracks. I studied every page. What would it take to move fast, before she has time to find another lifeline? We'd need a shell entity. Something clean, professional-looking, with a plausible story. Frontmen who can sit across a table and not blink. Dwayne tapped the table. This isn't a small operation, Franklin. Then let's build one. Over the following 2.5 weeks, while my daughter endured what I'm about to tell you, I built what I started thinking of, privately, as my war machine. Dwayne set up a company called Low Country Capital Partners, registered clean out of a real office in Columbia. I liquidated 2 rental properties I'd held since the 90s, cashed out a chunk of my brokerage account, and called in a business line of credit I'd never touched. I recruited 3 men I'd known for years and trusted completely: a retired banker, a commercial lawyer nearing retirement, and a real estate developer who owed me a favor going back 15 years from a flood repair job I'd done at cost when his warehouse got hit. They agreed to be the public faces of the acquisition. No questions asked once I explained why. "She can't know it's connected to you," Dwayne reminded me more than once. "Not until the ink's dry. She won't." And while all that was happening quietly in conference rooms and lawyers' offices, my daughter was living through the worst 3 weeks of her adult life and calling me every few nights to tell me, in a voice that got thinner each time, that she could handle it. Week 1, they had her in housekeeping. Not observing, doing. Scrubbing bathrooms, stripping beds, hauling laundry carts through service corridors, so the guests wouldn't have to see staff at all, let alone the owner's daughter-in-law. Her mother-in-law would inspect the rooms personally sometimes, running a gloved finger along a baseboard, making her redo a bathroom 3 times over a smudge only she claimed to see. Week 2, they moved her to the kitchen for prep work, and she ate her lunch break alone at a folding table in the walk-in pantry until an older woman named Odell, who'd run that kitchen for 11 years, started sitting with her. "Don't let them break something in you that took your whole life to build," Odell told her one day, and my daughter repeated that line back to me on the phone with her voice cracking, grateful for a single kind word in an ocean of humiliation. Week 3 was the worst. Camille started parading her in front of vendors and board members. "This is my son's wife," she'd announce with that same bright, poisonous smile, learning humility from the bottom. Good for the soul. Meanwhile, at home, my daughter's husband kept telling her it was temporary, that his mother just did things this way, that everyone in the family had paid similar dues, which, I'd find out later, was a lie. He never scrubbed a single toilet in his life. And my daughter, trusting, loyal, wanting so badly for this new family to love her the way she loved them, believed it, or made herself believe it, because the alternative was admitting she'd married into something rotten. It was killing me. I want you to understand that. Every phone call, I had to sit on my hands and not tell her what I was building, because Dwayne was right. One slip, one relieved tone in my voice at the wrong moment, and Camille would smell blood before we were ready. Friday night of that 3rd week, my phone rang near 10 o'clock. My daughter. "Dad, there's a big event Monday." Investors flying in from Atlanta and Charlotte, people Camille's trying to impress for the Savannah property. She wants me serving drinks, in a uniform, like catering staff. Her voice cracked in a way I hadn't heard since she was small. "I don't know if I can do it, Dad." I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles ached. "You can do this. Just a little while longer. I promise you, everything is about to change." "What do you mean?" "Trust me. Keep your head down through Monday. Please." She went quiet, and then, in a smaller voice than I'd heard from her in 20 years, she said, "Okay, Dad, I trust you." And that trust felt like the heaviest thing I'd ever carried, heavier than any beam I'd hoisted in 39 years of construction work. I hung up and called Dwayne immediately. "Send the offer. I want it on her desk by Monday morning, before that event. Franklin, we're close but not fully buttoned up. Make us ready. She sees an exit before Monday, or my daughter serves drinks like a hired hand in front of a room full of strangers. Send it." The offer letter went out Monday at 8 a.m. on Low Country Capital Partners letterhead. Intent to acquire 60% of Cordova Grand Hospitality Group for $9.1 million cash. 48-hour response window. I wasn't there when Camille opened it, but Dwayne had the room wired through a contact of the retired banker's, and I sat in a parked car 2 blocks away, listening through an earpiece like some character in a movie I never thought I'd star in. I heard her lawyer's voice first, cautious. "They're legitimate. Verified funds, verified entity, Columbia registration checks out." "Who are they?" Camille's voice, sharp as broken glass. "Confidential investors. Standard for a transaction this size." Then her accountant, a woman named Yolanda Reyes, whose voice I'd come to recognize over days of surveillance, laying out numbers Camille clearly didn't want to hear out loud in front of her lawyer. $3.4 million due to 2 different lenders inside 90 days. Contractor liens on the Savannah property. Payroll for the Beaufort location running 11 days behind. "Without new capital," Yolanda said, "we don't survive the winter season." I heard Camille go quiet in a way that told me everything. She called the number on the letter that same afternoon. I wasn't on that call, but Dwayne relayed it to me line by line that evening over the phone, and I could picture Camille's face going through every stage of the same collapse I'd once watched happen to men who owed me money and thought their charm would save them. She demanded a meeting. Thursday morning, 10 a.m., private room at a hotel that wasn't hers, which I found almost funny given everything. While all of this negotiating was happening behind closed doors, Monday night arrived, the event my daughter had been dreading. I couldn't be there, and not being there was its own kind of agony, but Odell called me late that night, because my daughter had given her my number in case of emergency, which told me something about how bad it had gotten. She served the whole event without complaint, Odell told me. Camille had her circulating with a tray in a black and white uniform, introducing her to investors as learning the family business from the ground floor. One man asked her outright, in front of everyone, why the owner's daughter-in-law was working the room like waitstaff. Camille laughed and said something about character building. Your daughter just kept smiling and pouring. I watched her hands shake the whole night. Odell's voice went rough. I don't know how she held it together. Because she's stronger than any of them know, I said, and I meant it, and it made what I'd built feel less like a father's fury and more like something closer to justice. My daughter called me at midnight after the event ended, sitting in her car in the parking garage, and she didn't say anything for almost a full minute. Then, Dad, I don't think I can do this anymore. I felt like a prop tonight. Like a lesson she was teaching everybody about what happens if you're not born into this family right. You don't have to do it anymore, I told her. Come home tonight. Sleep in your old room. I need to tell you something tomorrow, and I need you sitting down for it. She came. I made her tea the way her mother used to, and I sat across the kitchen table from her, and I told her everything. The investigation, Dwayne, the debt, the shell company, the $9.1 million, Thursday's meeting. Her face went through disbelief, then something that looked almost like fear, then finally something that cracked wide open into tears she'd clearly been holding back for 3 weeks. Dad, that's your whole retirement. It was never doing anybody any good sitting in an account, I said. Money grows back. What they were doing to you doesn't heal on its own, not without somebody standing up and ending it. What happens Thursday? Thursday, I show up. Thursday morning, I stood in the anteroom of that private meeting bay in a plain white button-down and my good boots, listening through the wall as Camille arrived with her lawyer and her accountant, all business, all armor. My 3 associates, the banker, the lawyer, the developer, sat across from her, laying out the terms with the flat, unbothered patience of men who had nothing personal at stake, which is its own kind of intimidation. 9.1 for 60%, the retired banker said. You retain 40% and a consulting role at $75,000 a year. Consulting, Camille said, and I could hear the outrage curdling in her voice. This is my company. My mother built the first property from nothing. It was your company, my lawyer friend replied, calm as still water. If this offer isn't signed by end of day in 60 days, it belongs to 3 different banks, and you walk away with nothing but the liens against your own home. I heard the silence stretch out, heard Camille's pride wrestling with the math in front of her, heard her lawyer murmur something too low to catch, and then heard her say, in a voice gone brittle, 9.6. That's my floor. 9.1, the developer said. Final. More silence, longer this time. Fine, she said at last, and something in the way she said it, defeated, hollowed out, almost made me feel something close to pity. Almost. There's one more matter, the banker said. Our primary investor would like to meet you before signing. I heard footsteps, a pause, 3 knocks on the connecting door, and then I opened it myself and stepped through. The room fell silent in that particular way rooms do when something doesn't compute. Camille looked at me, at my boots, my plain shirt, and I watched her search her memory before it clicked. You're her father, that's right. This is a joke. She turned to her lawyer. This has to be some kind of joke. No joke, Miss Sutter, the banker said. Allow me to properly introduce the primary investor of Low Country Capital Partners. I pulled out the chair across from her and sat down, and for a moment I let myself feel the full weight of it. 38 years of living small so that this exact moment could exist. 38 years of savings, I said. Same truck for over a decade. While you were mortgaging a house on the Battery to look like old money, I was building something real, dollar by dollar, in case my daughter ever needed me to. This can't be legal, she said to her lawyer, who didn't even look up from the documents. It's entirely legal, ma'am. I won't sell to him. Then don't, I said. Walk away. In 60 days you lose everything instead of 40% of something, your choice. Her composure finally broke. Why are you doing this? I leaned forward, hands folded on the table, and let every ounce of 3 weeks of restraint come out level and quiet instead of loud. 3 weeks ago, I watched my daughter, a woman with a hospitality degree and 8 years of earned experience, on her knees scrubbing a toilet in the blazer she wore to her interview, while you stood in the doorway and told a stranger it was the only thing she was good for. You paraded her in a catering uniform in front of investors like a cautionary tale. You let your son stand by and call it character building. I'm not doing anything to you that you didn't build for yourself. I'm just done watching you do it to my daughter. She was too sensitive, Camille said, and even then, even in defeat, there wasn't a shred of shame in her voice. No, I said. You were too cruel. Sign the papers. Her hand trembled as she picked up the pen, and I watched her sign page after page, her signature growing shakier each time, the lawyer notarizing beside her. When it was done, I stood. One more thing, I said. Effective immediately, my daughter takes over as CEO of Cordova Grand. You're welcome to the consulting arrangement if you'd like it, but you'll report to her. Camille's head snapped up like she'd been slapped. You cannot be serious, completely serious. Clear out the office by Friday. I walked out of that room into the hallway and let myself breathe for the first time in what felt like 3 weeks straight. Dwayne was waiting by the elevator, and he clapped a hand on my shoulder. That was something, Franklin. That was justice, I said. Now let's go tell my daughter she's got a company to run. When I got to her house that afternoon, she was curled up on the couch in sweatpants, television on but unwatched, the particular stillness of someone who's stopped expecting anything good to happen to them. Her husband wasn't home. I'd find out later. He'd gone straight to his mother's the moment word got out, choosing her side without a second thought, which told my daughter everything she needed to know about the state of her marriage. Get dressed, I told her. We need to go somewhere. Dad, I really don't have it in me today. You do. Trust me one more time. In the truck, she finally asked where we were going. Cordova Grand, I said. Absolutely not. I am not walking back into that building. You are. But not as staff. I told her everything on the drive downtown. The investigation, the debt, the shell company, Thursday's meeting, Camille signing with a shaking hand. She sat in silence long enough that I started to worry, watching the live oaks and the church steeples slide past the window. And then she said, very quietly, You spent your whole retirement on me. Not on you, I said. For you. There's a difference, and it matters. I didn't do this for revenge, sweetheart. I did it because nobody gets to decide what you're worth except you. And I wasn't going to let a woman with a mortgaged mansion make that decision for my daughter. The front desk staff went wide-eyed when we walked in together. And the young woman working reception, the same one who told me which floor my daughter was on that first terrible day, actually teared up. You're the new owner's daughter, she said, then caught herself. I mean, are you... I'm the new CEO, my daughter said, and I watched her stand a little straighter as the words left her mouth, like they were settling into her spine. We took the elevator to the top floor, where Camille's office sat cleared out already. Bare walls, an empty desk, sunlight pouring through windows that looked out over the harbor. My daughter walked to the glass and stood there a long moment. You ready? I asked. She nodded, and we went down to the ballroom where every employee across the property had been asked to gather, close to 90 people, uncertain and buzzing with rumor. I stood at the front and said only, This is your new CEO. Some of you saw things over the past few weeks that never should have happened. That ends today. Then I stepped back and my daughter stepped forward, and I watched her find a voice I hadn't heard from her since she was a headstrong teenager who used to argue me under the table about curfew. 3 weeks ago I was on my knees in this building, scrubbing a toilet in my interview blazer, she said, and the room went dead silent. Some of you watched it happen. I don't blame anyone who looked away. I understand exactly what fear like that feels like, because I lived inside it every day. But that fear ends now. Her voice climbed, steadier with every sentence. My father taught me that how you treat people when you finally have power tells the whole truth about who you are. I intend to run this company on respect, from housekeeping to the executive floor, or I don't intend to run it at all. If you want to stay and build something better with me, I would be honored. If you need to go, I understand that too. The applause started slow, hesitant, and then built into something real. Odell made her way to the front afterward, eyes wet, and said, I'm sorry I couldn't do more for you those weeks. My daughter took both her hands. You did more than you know. You're the reason I made it through. That evening, alone in what was now her office, she sat behind the desk looking overwhelmed in a way I recognized from her first day of kindergarten. I don't know if I can actually do this, she admitted. You already did the hardest part, I told her. You survived it with your dignity intact. Everything from here is just leading. 6 months on, Cordova Grand, renamed simply the Doyle Collection, 4 properties instead of the original 4, because she'd stabilized the finances enough within the first quarter to hold on to every building, was turning a real profit for the first time in 3 years. My daughter transformed the culture from the ground up. Fair scheduling, a genuine living wage across every position, a mentorship track for housekeeping and kitchen staff who wanted to move into management, which is how Odell ended up as director of food and beverage across all 4 properties within the year. The biggest change she made, the one I'm proudest of, was converting an underused annex of the Savannah property into transitional housing partnered with a local nonprofit for hospitality workers coming out of housing insecurity, building people up instead of just building rooms. Her marriage didn't survive the truth of what her husband had let happen. The divorce went through quietly within 4 months. No prenup fight worth having, since it turned out most of what he'd claimed as personal wealth had actually belonged to his mother's crumbling company all along, and there wasn't much left to divide. He tried calling my daughter a handful of times afterward, and she let every one of those calls go to voicemail. As for Camille, she lasted 11 days as a paid consultant before pride got the better of her and she resigned in a huff, unable to stomach taking direction from the woman she'd once made scrub a toilet. Last I heard, she was renting a condo off Savannah Highway and doing freelance event consulting, and her son had moved in with her, the 2 of them left holding what remained of each other. My daughter met a man named Julian a year later, an architect brought in to consult on the Savannah renovation. Their first real conversation was an argument about historic preservation codes, not status or money, and something about that told me right away he was different from what came before. When he met me for the first time, he shook my hand like he meant it and said, "She talks about you constantly. Says you're the reason she knows her own worth." I told him I was just her father. He said, "That's not nothing." They got engaged this past spring, and last Sunday over the breakfast we still have together every week. Same as we always did, eggs and coffee at my kitchen table. She set down her cup and told me she wanted me to walk her down the aisle again. This time for real. This time for a man who deserved to stand at the other end of it. I couldn't say anything back. I just stood up and hugged her and let myself cry in a way I hadn't since her mother passed. People sometimes ask me if I regret spending nearly everything I'd saved across 38 years of work on one company, one moment, one act of standing between my daughter and a woman who wanted to grind her down. I don't. Not for 1 second. Money comes back if you're patient and you work. Dignity, once it's been taken from you and never restored, doesn't come back on its own. Somebody has to hand it back, and I decided a long time ago that if it ever came to that, I'd be the one to do it. I think about my wife often, especially on Sunday mornings, watching our daughter across that same kitchen table, laughing about wedding plans, glowing in a way I hadn't seen since before all of this started. I tell her sometimes quietly when nobody's listening, "Honey, our girl made it. She's happy. She's strong. She built something real out of the worst thing that ever happened to her, and I got to help her do it. We did all right." Looking back now, my only real regret is that I waited 3 weeks before I acted. 3 weeks while my daughter suffered through something no father should let a child suffer through even for a single afternoon. Don't be like me. If you see someone you love being ground down by people who were supposed to protect them, trust your gut the first time, not the 3rd week. And don't let anger be the thing steering you, because anger would have made me just as cruel as the woman I was up against. What steered me in the end wasn't revenge. It was the simple, stubborn belief that my daughter's worth was never anyone else's to decide. That belief is what saved her, and if I'm honest, it's what saved me too.